Did you know that most people spend a lot of time at work proving that they're right and someone else is wrong? This I'm right, you're wrong mentality. And it's no blame for anyone. That's how we're socialized, to show or prove that we're good, that we're valuable, that we're smart, that we're capable. So it's part of our socialization. There's no blame in it. Yet it creates some problems at work because we get in what we can call street fights, which they're like, we may not be using our fists, but we use our words. Like we fling words to someone by criticizing, judging, or blaming them, or we receive such flings from others. And so we spend a lot of time in this kind of IQ competition of who's better, who's smarter, who's right, more times, etc. And that creates problems at work that you probably experience, but that create a tension in a team environment, and it dilutes the collaboration and the creativity that can be created with collective intelligence. Now imagine if you go to work, you feel like you do not have to prove yourself. You've already proved yourself by being in that organization, by being hired. You are smart, you are capable, you have the experience you have, you're always learning, but you didn't have to prove yourself. All you do is share yourself. You share your ideas, your experience and your insights and your concerns and your vision of the project. Well, we can do that using a tool called going to the Acropolis. Now, the Acropolis is an ancient Greek relic that still stands today in Athens, and it represents a place where wise people were in the ancient times. Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. And it was where they communed and shared ideas and thought about things. And it's an easy way to think about how to somehow detach from this I'm right, you're wrong competition that often happens at work, and move away from it and be in a higher space where you can see other things happening from a distance, and you can really create some space for yourself to think and to be wise instead of reactive. So imagine these are people at the street level, and they're saying, I'm right, you're wrong, this happened, this data is better than your data, etc., etc. And then you go to the Acropolis and you notice that you don't hear what they're saying. You don't feel the emotions of the anger or frustration or reactivity. You don't see other than how they're clumped together. And you can get some perspective. And so it helps you see things in a different way. So to get perspective, you go to the Acropolis. Now, there are lots of things you get by doing this, and you can see the big picture. So instead of, you might easily get enthralled or hooked by a problem or a competition or somebody saying you're wrong, your ideas are wrong, and therefore you might even feel wrong, and you get defensive, and then things go downward from there. But if you go to the Acropolis and see the big picture and say, okay, where am I at the operational level? Am I thinking of details versus the big picture? Where am I sitting? Where are my colleagues, boss, or other people who I'm talking with sitting? And how can I put this in perspective and even help others put things in perspective by saying, what's the big picture here? What are we trying to do? Another is to access quiet. That's mostly from the emotional aspect, because the reality of emotional contagion is that we feel what other people feel. And the people who have the most intense emotions kind of win, in the sense that if there are 5 people in a team or in a meeting and 4 are frustrated, the person who's not frustrated will soon become frustrated because the emotions are contagious. That happens the same if 4 people are really happy and there's 1 person upset. After time, that person can start feeling better because there's a lot of energy that's optimistic or more open and friendly. So because of emotional contagion, we really can't escape it, except when we go somewhere in our minds. We can go physically to somewhere, like in a city, you could go to a penthouse, and you can imagine what you can see from a penthouse level versus the first floor. But if you go there in your mind, you can start to realize that you're distanced a little from the emotions, and you don't have to feel the frustration of that moment. So that's what access quiet means. Communicating at an appropriate level also helps. So what it means is, if you don't want to communicate at the street level, you don't want to use your position power over someone and say, just do it. Or if somebody tells you, I'm your boss, just do it. Or you don't want to be in this competition of I'm right, you're wrong. You could start to shift the communication. So if somebody is here arguing and saying, your ideas are completely off, I don't know where you got your data, I'm very concerned about how this is going to change the project scope, you could start going to the big picture, and you can bring that person to the big picture by saying, what is the point of what we're doing here? You could also use like reconnecting with a vision. What are we trying to do here? Where are we trying to go? And broaden the communication instead of like argue on the details. Because most of us, if you notice, this is an insight and it's a little provocative, most of us fear not answering questions from people in a hierarchy. Notice that in yourself and others. It's as if somebody asks us questions, we have to answer. Politicians do this to the extreme. Like they are asked questions and they answer different questions. So they're kind of the masters of that approach. But if you notice, most people feel, because of our socialization, that we live in a hierarchy and a patriarchy, and we better listen or be compliant. That's what we're taught at school, right? Because if we question our teachers at school, we get punished. So it really reinforces the compliance model. So when someone, argues at this level, you really don't have to answer every question. You could say, let's take a moment to look at the big picture, reconnect with a vision. Why are we doing this? How does this issue fit in with a bigger picture? And when you focus on the issue, the emotions get a little bit expressed or diluted, and it's not as intense. So you can change the dimensions of the argument or the discussion from a street fight to a wise perspective. And that's why we say, the Acropolis is where wise people are thinking. That's why I use it instead of a penthouse. A penthouse is not, it's a modern building. It's no wisdom associated with it. But the Acropolis is like people were actually thinking about small and grand issues. And we can access the wisdom inside of us. We don't have to think somebody else out there is wise. We can say, what would be wise if I say it's wise? Like, what is a wise thing to do in my perspective? If you can't think of anything, you could say, what would Gandhi do? What would Aristotle do? What would anyone you respect do in that situation? It can give you ideas. So this is another tool of the human-centric leading that helps you shift problems within yourself and between others on a team or group environment, where you can use this perspective, access that, and change things to kind of create a better, more open discussion and more positive outcome.